Okay, so the recording just started, so thanks to Ronnie for doing that. And so, like I mentioned in the last class, these three Zoom classes are going to be pretty high level, just an introduction to what personnel management is. As I mentioned last time, we kind of, at least in this part of the world, use the terms personnel and human resources interchangeably. So if I go back and forth between that language, no, I mean the same thing. Um, and um, and so let me share my slides with you. And again, the slides are just for the purposes of helping you take notes. So if they're helpful, great. If they're not, then feel free to disregard them. But today, we're just going to talk about the basics of personnel management, what it is, why it's important, and what you are expected to do as someone who employs people or who manages volunteers. And then we'll move on to different styles of employee supervision and characteristics of functional and dysfunctional teams. We'll probably do this in the other order since we'll finish up by talking about what you might have observed in the video clip that I had you watch. And hopefully you're finding that the preparation I'm asking you to do requires only a minimal amount of time. The intent is not to overload you, but just to kind of get us set for what we'll talk about during our time together. So the first thing I want to do is just get a feel for how many of you have in the past or currently have the experience of supervising particularly paid employees. Just how many of you have had that experience? Okay. All right. So some of you do.
I
A lot
have
of you.
it.
And so based on that, what would you say, summarize what your responsibilities are as you understand them with regard to direct supervision of employees. How would you summarize your what the responsibilities that entails?
I would like to say that
Yeah, go ahead, Sammy.
I have a responsibility of the administrator of the school,
Mhm.
through which the non-teaching faculty of the school come under the administrator category here in India.
Okay.
So all those employees who are not into the field of teaching, maybe the clerical staff, the sweepers, the drivers, the conductors, and so on, they come under that category. So it's my way of managing them and occupying them and following the schedule given to them. That's how I have a direct supervisor to them.
Okay. Anybody else? What are your day-to-day responsibilities as far as supervising employees or managing teams?
My day is a responsibility as a working day in a school and planning the schedule of the schedule of the programs of the school timing, follow the school timing and the transportation in charge and the maintenance in charge, and also the maintenance comes different category of electrician, plumbing, and so on, and the classroom maintenance in charge, maintaining the classrooms neatly arrangement and so on. So these are the different categories of work has been employed to different groups, and they have to complete the target, and the group leader will uh, report to me as a
Okay,
supervisor.
great. Anybody else? How would you describe your role in being charged with managing employees?
um, make sure make sure the mission is or the job is achieved and achievable for the employee, and
Mhm.
assessing controlling the job.
Very good. Yeah, and those are things we'll talk about in specific detail when we all meet at Notre Dame over the summer. But that's a big part of a supervisor's job. And to any of you who do or have supervised employees, what do you think is the most challenging part of supervising other people? Yeah, Alfred.
Yeah, most challenging is when we need to correct or need to give a kind of a criticism or the challenge the concerned person. In my office now for last 4 5 years, I am the financial administrator and looking after the mission projects. I have many staffs in the province here in the Northeast. Sometimes to make them to fall in line with me, progress with me. Sometimes it is difficult, and when I critique, then there is sometimes kind of unhappiness. There is no they will feel, oh father, how much ever work we do, father is not happy. So I need to have a different methodology to make sure they are happy, or make some fun, or buy some cookies during their tea break or something like that to pacify them.
Yeah, well, and so you hit on a couple of good things that can be very difficult that we don't receive any training for. One is criticism, and many people in religious life don't love conflict. We want to be nice. We want to serve people, and so criticizing people can be uncomfortable. And then just talking about maintaining employee morale. You mentioned that as well, and that's as the leader, we are responsible for setting that culture. So those. And again, we don't receive any formal training in how to do that. Yeah, Julius.
Yes, I think I'll say the same that my biggest challenge when it comes to supervision is more to do with that having that hard talk with an individual when you want him or her to do better and you want to challenge a few things that is not doing very well, but without letting him or her feel like he's not being appreciated or it's not being appreciated. I think for me, that's the biggest challenge. I always feel like in the process of doing this, he may feel more negative about the whole situation and feel I'm not appreciated, I'm not doing my best. And so like, how best can I make him do better, acknowledge his or her mistakes or her challenges or her weaknesses, with at the same time be able to motivate him or her to do better without feeling like he's not really being appreciated, or I'm not overlooking on every detail he's doing or he's doing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think in any part of the world, a supervisor faces that exact same challenge every day. Father Larry.
Thank you. My challenge as well is about the reception of the message, especially when perhaps making some tough decisions or corrections. I've experienced those perhaps who can be demoralized by some comments or some corrections, and yet the message has to be delivered or they have to be corrected. So I always find that as one of the challenges, that some may receive the message well, but some again may feel perhaps not appreciated or not loved, and some may be as if scared that they will lose their job in the next, if they do that the next time. So they can keep on guard and just do things while mindful of the boss in quotes. So that is one of the things that I've experienced.
Yeah, and that's an effective, if a leader is truly effective, you're right, then the employees work just as hard when the boss isn't looking as they do when he's there. And that's the kind of team all of us want, but it doesn't happen. It can sometimes be very difficult to make happen. Yeah, Paul.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. One of the challenges I face sometimes have to do with, dealing with people who have also occupied, the same position as you, and then you trying to be a little bit innovative in what you want to bring on board. And then the challenge there being that, people sometimes are not responsive to change. So sometimes it becomes a bit challenging. when dealing with such, members whom you think have also been in the same position. And then sometimes you receive some cooperation. Sometimes people are also a little bit, lackadaisical. People are not responding. So it brings a lot of challenge to rather bring them together, actually, to be able to focus on the agenda and what has to be achieved. So that's basically one of the challenges sometimes I face as a leader in my small department here in the school. Thank you.
Yeah, and change management is another very difficult thing, because what I'm sure any of you who are priests who have been pastor of a parish realize that anytime you make what you think is a small change, it can be perceived as a very large change by your parishioners. And so there's a process that you have to go through to get people to buy into that change. It's certainly the same with the people you supervise. So let me ask you this. How most of us, whether or not we supervise employees, supervise volunteers. And so how has your experience of supervising volunteers been different than your experience supervising paid employees?
For employees, you have to be very
Oh, go ahead, please, Mark.
very how to say professional on the way you signify failures or other events during work time.
Yeah, there are certain levels of professionalism that an employee expects, and your relationship with volunteers is a little bit different. Yeah, Paul.
I think mine has to do with the level of commitment on the part of volunteers. At some point in time, they feel they are not really fully into the work they are doing, just as and when and at their own pace and all that. Meanwhile, they are part of the system, and their contributions towards whatever is going on is also important. But how to get them, committed to it becomes a challenge, because you realize that they do things at their own pace, at their own pace. So the level of commitment, I think, at some point in time becomes a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, knowing very well that they are not like the other regular employees, and then there are certain commitments on their part that should not be, really enforced. They should be left for them to really, move at their own pace, which sometimes becomes a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and I think that ties into the fact that we can hold paid employees to a different standard than volunteers. Obviously, we want to get the best out of our volunteers for our ministry's sake and for the sake of their own Christian discipleship. But we can hold our paid employees to a higher standard because somebody among the people of God is sacrificing money in order to pay their salaries. We live off of sacrificial giving from others. And so we can hold people to that higher standard. But in some sense, all the work we get out of volunteers is a gift. So we can't kind of have the same set of expectations for even the best of our volunteers. And so with that, let me ask again, those of you who've specifically supervised employees, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give to a confrere in Holy Cross who is faced with supervising employees for the first time? Or if you wish somebody would have given you one piece of advice, what would that have been? Yeah, Alfred.
When I assumed this office, my predecessor had told me, be patient, be calm, be cool, don't get tensed, be patient. That was the piece of advice he had given me.
Yeah, and And that's true. And again, we've seen this just serving people, the people of God in ministry, that even when other people lose their patience, we as the leader have to always remain in control and can't match the level of emotion that other people might offer. Very good. Other advice that you would give to a brother confrere supervising employees? Oh yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I think I would like to agree with my brother who just spoke, because it was in my mind that I think I was also
Reason up a little on us there, Paul.
advised to be patient with people that behaviors. So if I really want to get the best out of them, then I have to be patient with them. They also have to feel a sense of belonging to that particular department, and then so with that I'll be able to get the best out of them. So patience, I think, is also the way to go, which was the advice I also got.
Great. Thank you very much, Larry.
Okay, thank you. I could also give the one of patience, the one already mentioned, but I will give the advice of know your people, just knowing them and their diversity. I think for me that will help in dealing with the dynamics that may arise.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sebastian.
Thank you. Mine is not very different from the rest, but I would say you take time to learn the dynamics and also to understand why things are done as they are, so that you don't rush in making changes, and yet you don't understand why this thing is done like this. So you need some time to learn the dynamics within the workers.
Absolutely, because when human beings are involved, no two groups are alike. So something that was very effective in a past ministry, in a past set of employees, might have to be adjusted somewhat for the particular dynamics of the group you're leading now. So that's very good advice. Julius.
Personally, also I would say that when it comes to supervising employees, the advice in agreement with what the rest have said, and in addition to that, I would say, even when you have had more or files about individual employees, interact with them with an open experience to express them personally. So to avoid the bias or judgment from past experience from former supervisors or whatever reports they have, to always try to have your personal experience with each one of them.
Yes.
That's key, I think.
Oh, very good. Okay. Well, what I'd like to do right now is to go on. I think I've gotten everybody. And
Father,
did I miss someone?
Brother Paul is here.
Oh, sure. Brother Paul, please.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just a bit of information. Brother Ken says he has been on waiting for the host to add him, but he's still there and it's not being added. So I shall alert you.
Okay, yeah, Brother Ronnie, if you can admit him. Okay. Okay. So I just send Father Ronnie is hosting the meeting, so I just sent a message. So hopefully he'll be able to be admitted soon. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is just talk about, like I said, very higher level discussion about the importance of personnel management. So first of all, there are several reasons. Like I mentioned before, there are a lot of people who don't enjoy this part of church leadership. It's not something, nobody becomes a priest or a brother because they want to supervise a lot of employees. It can often take a lot of your time. There can often be, when human beings are involved, there can often be a lot of interpersonal dynamics that aren't very pleasant to deal with. And so a lot of guys prefer to avoid this part of their job, but it's a very important part to do well. So in our last class, we talked about the importance of helping people live their baptismal priesthood and offer their gifts and service to the church for their sanctification and for the sanctification of the people you serve. But from a practical sense, one thing that's critically important is hiring the right employees. Like we talked about before, most of us do not have nearly as many people as we would like to have in order to make our ministries run ideally. So any weak employee has a negative impact right away on our ministry. Also, church ministry is a specialized job, so we don't always have a huge pool of qualified candidates to choose from. And so we need to make sure that we really get the right people with the right skill set and the ability to pass that on. Another reason personnel management is so important is for simply the importance of good job descriptions. We'll look at sample job descriptions when we meet at Notre Dame, but it's important that every job that we have, including kind of the higher level volunteers, is well articulated so that that employee knows exactly what they're doing, and so their coworkers and other people in the ministry know exactly what they're doing. There are legal reasons for that. I know in some cultures, the employee job description carries an awful lot of weight. I've heard of countries where you're not allowed to ask an employee to do something that is not on their job description. And so making changes to job descriptions in that kind of environment is very difficult. So it's important that you really lay out that job description well. Also, if you need to ask an employee to improve, you need to take corrective action with an employee, or you need to terminate an employee, it's important that you have a very well-defined job description so that you can then articulate exactly where that employee is falling short and either needs improvement or failed to meet your expectations. That has to be done before there are problems, not after. Also, employees will be more productive if they know what they're responsible for and what other people are responsible for. They won't waste their time on things that aren't in their purview, and they'll be able to kind of work with a certain freedom of knowing what you expect from them. And that goes a long way towards employee job satisfaction. So we talked before about how an employee's relationship with their supervisor is a big component of job satisfaction. And so knowing what is expected of them, knowing that they are coming to work every day, knowing what their supervisor wants of them, helps their job satisfaction. Not knowing what's expected or feeling like expectations change day to day is a source of real frustration for employees that can hurt your employee retention. Yeah, so personnel management is also a very key part of employee retention, especially in a competitive environment where that employee would have a lot of other job opportunities. Again, we can't pay the same in a church, at least in most cultures, as a really good employee could make elsewhere. So their job satisfaction is a key component of retaining employees. So turnover, and by turnover, I mean when employees leave and new employees come, that's not necessarily a bad thing. New employees can bring some fresh life and energy into your ministry, and employees that perhaps stay on longer than they should can sometimes have a negative impact. But too much turnover can be very disruptive. Because first of all, if all your employees are new, you're continually having to train them and get them oriented toward the ministry, and that takes time, and that's also a period of diminished productivity. So if you're always bringing new employees on board, you're not reaching your full potential in how you do your ministry. And then also employee retention is very important in church ministry because so much of our work is centered on building relationships. And building relationships takes time. And when an employee leaves, who your parishioners or your students have developed a real relationship with, there are certain parts of that ministry that just kind of stall or take a lot of time to rebuild. And so making sure that you are supervising your employees in a way that increases the retention of good employees is a very, very important part of the success of your ministry. And then, like I said, there are tons of legal issues surrounding how you manage your employees. We'll talk about this in a lot more detail over the summer, but I'm sure all of you have seen plenty of ways in which supervising employees can put you into conflict with civil laws. And so it's really important that we are aware of this and so that we don't make mistakes that will actually have real consequences for our ministry. All right, so let's look at the roles of a supervisor. So you can basically break that into two categories. One, managing individual employees. We'll focus a lot more on that in the summer. But when you look at what's called the employee life cycle, the 4 stages of employment that every single employee in any job anywhere goes through. They are hired, they are oriented to their new assignment, they are supervised and assessed, and they are terminated. One day they will stop working at that job, whether they're fired or resign or retire or die. Everyone will stop working a job at some point. So those are the 4 stages of an employee life cycle. And you, as their supervisor, manage all 4 of those stages. Like I said, we'll talk about that in detail during the summer. But we also manage employees as a group, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that today. So some of the things that we'll cover over the summer related to managing employees as a group are things like running effective meetings. I'm sure all of us have had experience of meetings that were just awful, that we felt were a waste of our time. As the leader, you're in a position to do something about that. So learning how to run meetings effectively is an important aspect of leading your team. Project management. So for those larger projects, getting big bulks of work done that take a team in order to accomplish, you are responsible for leading those projects. And there are best practices on how to do that. We'll talk about that this summer. Conflict resolution. I'm sure I know my spiritual director has always told me where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, somebody disagrees about something. So as a supervisor, all of us will have to manage conflict among employees, among the people we minister to. And again, there are ways to learn how to grow in that skill. And then we already talked about managing change. The fact that anytime we implement any kind of change, if we want our staff and the people we serve to buy into that change, there's a process, some leadership that we need to exercise. Those are all functions of what you are responsible for doing as a personnel manager. And so some of the softer skills that we need to learn in order to be effective in that, again, we need to learn best practices. We need to talk to other people with supervisory responsibilities, but we need to learn to manage different personalities. As somebody mentioned, every workplace is different. And so you were talking about giving criticism in a way that the other person could receive and wouldn't be demoralized by. While we need to be consistent between different employees, we also need to recognize different personality types and recognize that for some person, a message might be best delivered one way, but that approach might need to be altered because of a different person, just because they're different people. So understanding different personality types and learning how to communicate with different personalities is an important part of being a supervisor. Also, skills that we need to learn we need to learn how to be mentors and coaches. Most of us have hopefully benefited from good mentorship from our confreres in Holy Cross or from other people we've encountered in ministry. But as supervisors, people are counting on us to lead them and guide them and help them grow as Christian disciples and as ministers in the church. We need to learn how to present criticism in a constructive way so that it leads to growth and change, not just conflict. It's always difficult to give criticism, But when we give criticism, we need to give careful attention to how we phrase it. One, we want it to be clear. Some people are so afraid of giving criticism that they water it down so much that the person really doesn't hear what you want them to hear. But also, to the extent possible, to present it as an opportunity for growth and to show them how to benefit from this criticism and how to grow in the areas you are criticizing so that something constructive can happen from that criticism. That's a skill we all need to develop. And then a couple others, we need certainly the virtue of detachment. I think a virtue that we don't talk about nearly enough, as we need to be kind of detached from taking praise and criticism too personally. I know there are a lot of people who go into ministry have a desire to please others, but we have to kind of be detached from that, which means we really have to understand our role very well and just have confidence in what we're doing so that we can be detached from the praise and criticism that inherently go with leadership. One of my favorite quotes regarding this is from Saint Mother Teresa, who once said, "If you are truly humble, then nothing will affect you, neither praise nor criticism, because you know who you are." And so the more confident we are in our work, the more we'll be able to deal with the praise we don't deserve, that keep it from going to our head, and the criticism we don't deserve, to keep it from bearing us down. All right. And then finally, we also, as leaders and supervisors, have to have the ability to look into the future, to be able to see past the current day and problem in a way that our staff might not be able to do. So if we are going to lead them, we need to be always looking forward at the same time as we're dealing with the challenges of the present. And so my hope is that all of us will continue to develop these skills after this course is done. Again, there's only so much you can learn in 3 Zooms and a few days together at Notre Dame. But it's a very big part of your job, and there's not a lot of formal training. So like I mentioned last week, I highly recommend that you find mentors with personnel management experience that you can call, people who are preferably not involved in your ministry so that you don't have conflicts of interest or confidentiality issues. But we need places to get good advice. It's very important. And so we need good guidance. And then also take advantage of any continuing education opportunities that your diocese offers. Like I said, if we don't get a lot of training, so any advice that you can get or any continuing education you can get is really important. All right, so now I'd like to shift directions just a little bit and talk about management of teams. So we're going to spend the rest of our time today talking about managing our employees collectively as a team. And the model that I'm going to present, so I'm using a model for each of these. And again, models are just tools. So this model isn't the only model out there, but I find it an effective way of kind of addressing some of these issues. So the model I'm using is from an organization in the US called Amazing Parish. And they have identified what they call 5 characteristics of dysfunctional teams. And my hope is that by discussing dysfunctional teams, we'll be able to see what makes a team functional and makes a team thrive. Sometimes that's easier to do by identifying the negative. So let's look at the first dysfunction that they described is the absence of trust among team members. Have any of you been involved in a team, whether as a supervisor or just a member of the team, where there is a lack of trust among team members that adversely affected your ministry? Yeah, Brother Jimmy, what was without naming names or anything like that? What can you describe that?
Yeah, I guess I've been a part of a team where like a leader in particular wasn't trusted to like complete a task that had been entrusted to them. So I think a lot of like the supporting staff felt like they had to carry a little bit more weight, but then like frustration just grew because I guess there were questions of competence. So I think that's where the trust was lost, was if I put in all this work and then will this person execute that task? Or are we doing the work and it's not going, it's not worth putting in that effort anymore. So
and what happened to that team? How did that situation end up?
Um,
If you can say.
yeah, I don't know if I want to go into too much
Got
detail,
it.
but like things still happened. Things still like the basics moved along, but like in terms of like moving a team forward, it just kind of felt like it stalled. Like there wasn't progress. There wasn't. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say stalled was kind of the experience during that time was just like we're all sitting in a rut, not getting out of it.
And did that cause people to leave, seek other jobs?
Not immediately, although this environment I've been in is a little bit different in that
Okay.
sense,
Got it.
um,
Okay.
but a lot of speak about that, even if there wasn't follow through on that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Anybody else been part of a team that was characterized by a profound lack of trust? Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I remember a team direction board of a school, direction committee of the school with the director, the headmaster. We had lots of difficulties to trust, and one of the way it wa- it ha- it he one of his way of managing was to not telling the same thing to everyone.
Oh,
I don't know you, which what made it impossible to very difficult to work together because he would say something to one of his to the I don't know the dean of student life and something else to the vice director and something else and it made it very difficult to work.
yeah. And that's one thing you learn as an employee, as supervisor too, is your employees talk to each other. If you tell two of them two different things, they're going to find out, and it's going to cause a lot of trust issues in your team. And so for this model, what they recommend as the primary step for building trust is vulnerability. That you can't build trust without vulnerability. And that includes the supervisor and the team members. So by vulnerability, I don't mean being overly sentimental or emotional, but it means that people need to know that they're not going to be penalized for being honest, for saying something that might be difficult to hear, for making an unpopular suggestion, or even for making a suggestion that doesn't get adopted. Um, if people feel like they can't say those things or they're going to be penalized for saying any of those things, they're going to withdraw and not communicate openly, at least not in a healthy way. Instead, it'll turn into office gossip or territorialism or something like that. But in situations like the ones you were mentioning, um, an effective leader is one who is willing to hear those difficult things from his team member. So you, like Brother Jimmy, might not go up to his supervisor and say, nobody thinks you're competent. But he could say something like, we have some concerns about this part of the work. It doesn't seem to be progressing as quickly as we hoped, and it's really causing problems for other people. So as a leader, if somebody comes and says that to you, whether it's accurate or not, you have to at least be willing to listen and be open. And again, as long as it's said respectfully and with good intentions, to not penalize the person who said it, so that perhaps you might hear something that would make you more effective. In a situation like Mark's, same thing. If with an effective supervisor who wants to build a trust-filled environment, then to go to them and say, okay, we're getting mixed messages here. We want to make sure everybody is on the same page. Can we talk to you about what your expectations are, right? But if there's no trust, people won't feel comfortable going and doing that, and the problems will persist, like you indicated. And a good place is, as a supervisor, you're in a position to make this happen. First of all, if you have regular individual meetings with the people who report to you, that gives a wonderful opportunity for honest communication. And if you set the precedent that in these regular meetings that we have, you're free to speak honestly, and I will listen to what you say, and they see that really happens, then there's a natural venue to bring those things up instead of having to make a special appointment with the boss to say something difficult, which is going to scare a lot of people away. For groups, if you are having regular team meetings, then those are good opportunities to have honest conversation. We'll talk about facilitating meetings over the summer, but the way that you facilitate meetings as the leader will go a long way towards determining whether people feel comfortable saying difficult things and whether they say them in a professional and constructive way. So the more you can do to draw out comments that would be helpful for the team or areas where there's anxiety or concern, the more that will go a long way towards building trust within the group. Right. So any questions about that first dysfunction, building trust? Let's talk about their second dysfunction, which is fear of conflict. As I indicated before, my personal opinion is that a lot of people in the church are afraid of conflict or don't kind of actively avoid conflict. Again, we want to be nice people. We want to build rather than tear down. And it can be very uncomfortable to engage conflict, whether ours or managing conflict between employees. The fact is, as a leader, there's no way you can get away from this. So if we give in to being conflict averse, that'll carry down to our team, and these conflicts will brew onto the surface instead of being handled constructively. So based on conflicts that you've encountered, especially in team settings in ministry, is there a way that you've seen those handled effectively that you think is a good best practice for supervisors to know? How have you seen conflicts in teams managed effectively? Right. Well, maybe this means nobody's seen conflicts managed effectively, which is entirely possible. But here's some advice from the Amazing Parish model that I think as supervisors, we always need to know, because we need to practice it ourselves, but we also need to be able to coach our employees when they're not doing these things and handling their conflicts in a destructive way. The first thing they suggest is that anytime we're having a conflict, discuss the issue, not the person, right? So the issue is not, Father, you're always late for Mass, you're never on time, right? That's the person. Instead, the issue is Mass never starts on time, right? And so so just depersonalizing it makes people less defensive. And so the more you can talk about the issue, so the issue is not that you is ultimately that you want Mass to start on time, and whatever Father has to do in order to get there is fine. So keeping it focused and just making sure that you are never saying you're so this, you're to this, you never do this, but always back it up and discuss the issue, not the person. The other thing, and this is becoming increasingly less common in our culture, especially here in the West, is taking the time to listen to the other person's opinions rather than just trying to win the argument. You know, when somebody says something that is that we disagree with, so often immediately in our minds, we're thinking about how to refute everything that they say and how to win the argument. Winning the argument doesn't necessarily help your team. And so instead, if you really listen to that person and understand where they're coming from, and as Christians, we're just always supposed to assume the best motives of everybody, even right? And so assume that this person loves your ministry, they have its best interests at heart, even if you don't agree with what they're suggesting. Then you can present your opinion in a way that meets them where they're at instead of telling them where they should be. And it's also possible you might hear something in their argument that makes you reconsider something that you're thinking, or that identifies some common ground that could be a good starting point for the two of you. So really taking the time to be good listeners, which we should be doing in ministry anyway, is very important. And then the other side of that is don't take rejection of your idea as a personal attack. I'm sure we've all worked with people who, if you criticize their ideas or disagree with them, they take it personally, and all of a sudden you go from talking about ministry to having an interpersonal conflict. So when you're on the other end and receiving criticism, do not take it as a personal attack. Resist that temptation to instantly get defensive or to personalize it. And instead, again, go back to discussing the issue. Because again, allowing people to disagree with you on an issue is one way that you build trust as a leader. The other thing is, I think as a leader, we're in a position to make sure that we regularly talk about issues where there may be different opinions. If we are in a group that never has any conflict, then most likely people are keeping disagreements to themselves. And so if you're having regular staff meetings, draw out people's opinions, invite differing opinions so that people get used to the idea that having different opinions isn't a bad thing and isn't going to end in conflict or fighting. Again, as a supervisor, you are in a direct position to make sure that happens on a regular basis. All right. And part of that is basic skills of meeting facilitation. If one person is doing all the talking and has strong opinions about everything, gently invite them to pause and let other people speak. If there are other people who never contribute, gently use your role as a facilitator to draw them out and to encourage them to speak and to speak honestly. And then finally, one practical tip that I've learned is, as the leader, if I have an opinion on something, I usually save it till the end, because oftentimes if the boss voices an opinion, then the discussion stops right there, especially in cultures where people are very deferential to authority. Just be aware that your opinion can kind of stop the discussion right there. So use that wisely. Okay. The third dysfunction that they identify is they describe as lack of commitment. People being there and putting in their work, but not really giving their heart and soul to your ministry. And so the two things that they recommend for achieving commitment are, the first is buy-in. And hopefully that's a term everybody's familiar with. Getting everybody to buy into the ideas that you're proposing and the goals of your ministry. And what's important to mention is that buy-in is different than consensus. Consensus is wonderful if everybody agrees on something, but it's not always possible. And I know that there are particular models in ministry where they try and achieve everything by consensus, and that runs into problems. I know talking with you and I used to teach this to the seminarians at Notre Dame and the men in formation. A lot of them would work in the residence halls in the schools and say that their rector required consensus for everything, and so their meetings took 3 or 4 hours because they would have to try and use all that time until everybody agreed. So nobody was in a good mood. Nobody enjoyed that. Good decisions weren't made. So a leader has to try and achieve consensus, but know when it's not possible, and then help people to buy into a solution that perhaps they don't love. And to do that, we need to make sure that everybody's ideas are heard and understood, so that you really listen to people's ideas. And even if you end up not implementing them or disagreeing with them, that they know that they were heard, that they were listened to with respect, and that you've explained why you're going the other direction. So they might not like it, but they can buy into something in that way. All right, and then clarity is the other thing that can help lack of commitment. So it's important that everybody has a solid understanding of what's being done, what decisions have been made. When we start talking about good meeting minutes and action items for meetings, that's how you make sure that people feel like their time was well spent in a meeting, is if you have clarity. Okay. The fourth characteristic of a dysfunctional team that this model identifies is avoidance of accountability, where people don't take ownership of their work and they don't take ownership of their mistakes. And again, as a leader, we can do a lot in order to promote a culture of accountability. Again, clear job descriptions are essential for this because people have to know what's expected of them before they can be held accountable. And they need to know what the people around them are doing as well, so that they know how their work relates. When we talk about meeting follow-up, if we assign action items to people at meetings, we need to make sure that individual names are attached to every task so that everybody leaves knowing, okay, I am responsible for this item by this date. And that's always our responsibility as the leader. In order for people to be held accountable, somebody needs to hold them accountable. And that's where, again, being willing as a supervisor to offer criticism or have difficult conversations is important. Without that, there will be no culture of accountability and people will not take ownership for their actions. And that's also where regular meetings with employees and regular meetings with teams are really important so that you have a natural opportunity to give criticism without it being a big deal. All those things. And so you'll see that all of this boils down to communication. Accountability is a function of communication, and in environments where communication is poor, accountability is one of the many things that suffers. So as the leader, it's your job to ensure that good communication takes place. And then the last dysfunction that they identify is inattention to results, where people are not focusing on the goals of your ministry, but they're focusing on their own individual goals instead. And that's, again, where you as the leader need to make sure that you are always, in every team meeting, in every project that you're leading, always drawing their attention to why we're doing this and the greater good that's supposed to be achieved. Remember, everything we do in ministry is directed toward the salvation of souls. So there should not be much of anything that we do without somehow talking about the salvation of souls and the good of the people we serve. So the more that you keep that on the front burner, and the more that you build that into your incentive system, how you reward people, how you discipline people, then people will all be moving in the same direction. And so I know I've done a lot of talking in this section. It'll be a little more interactive in the next section. But any question about those 5 dysfunctions or any comments based on your own observations? Okay. So let's move on. The last thing I want to look at is relates to the video that I had you watch, which is one model of different employee supervision and leadership styles. And he calls it situational leadership, the fact that different situations demand different leadership styles. And he identified 6 leadership styles. And so we'll talk about each of these just very briefly to make sure that we're on the same page. But then I want to look at them in terms of different scenarios and see how you might apply these in different scenarios. Because all of us kind of gravitate toward a particular style of leadership based on our own personality and our own comfort level. But there will be times when we need to change how we lead people depending on the situation we're in. And some of those may be a little uncomfortable for us. So that if we're aware of those and can consciously move from one leadership style to another, we'll be a lot more effective for the people that we're managing and ultimately for the people that we're called to serve in ministry. So let's just recap a quick definition of each of these 6 leadership styles. So from the video, does anybody remember what a visionary leadership style was?
Steve, I could try. If I remember right, it was like somebody who can hold the big picture in mind and kind of keep people moving towards the goal.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's someone, like I said, a leader needs to be able to look into the future and help other people get there. And so that's absolutely what a visionary leadership style is. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I think one thing I also picked under visionary style has to do with you should have a positive thought into whatever ideas, whatever objective you set to want to achieve. So that's one thing that I picked from the visionary style of leadership.
Okay, very good. Yeah, Brother Kenneth.
Yeah, so it basically is looking at a leader who is very focused and it's like pretty much knows what the group dynamics and the group goals are, and what in some of the particular American movie that I watched, it's a eyes on the prize. So it's like the eyes is directly on the prize. So
Exactly. And so you've got your eyes on the prize and you're helping the people you lead get their focus there as well. Okay, coaching. Does anybody remember what the coaching style was? That one is- Oh, Alfred.
Yeah, coaching is something that you keep on motivating yourself as well as the group.
Yeah,
That
and
you need to achieve your vision. To that effect, you need every time speaking about it when things are not going on the right way, or there could be a moment where success is not being achieved yet. That complete motivation has to be the role of the leader to
Yeah.
make sure that all are intact, all are happy, all are moving towards that vision.
Okay. Yeah, Brother Ken.
yeah, so with the coaching bit of it, I think they were looking at kind of managerial, where they try to employ the functions of a good manager. So here, my understanding is that they try to bring together all the various managerial functions at play to achieve the stated objectives.
Yeah, and the thing that makes coaching distinctive is it's really this is you coach a team, but it focuses on individuals and kind of helping individuals develop the skills that they need, shore up their weaknesses, really reach their full potential, where you kind of actively help people do that based on your experience in leadership. I'm going to keep moving ahead just because I'm aware of the time. Affiliative. Who remembers what an affiliative leader was? Paul.
Yeah, affiliative. I think he was talking about the fact that you need to take care of the social capital, of the group. So that's one thing I also picked from the social capital.
Absolutely. So the affiliative is less focused on a task or even a vision for the future and is more focused on team dynamics, trying to strengthen the dynamics of a team, convinced that that will help the team function more effectively no matter what the task is. Okay. A democratic leader. What did he have to say about democratic leadership? Yeah, Father Larry.
Yeah, the democratic one is involving all the stakeholders, all the teams that you have, especially the human resource, so that each one has an input towards achieving of the goal.
Absolutely. And so a democratic leader emphasizes collaboration. We talked last time about how Jesus could have done anything that the apostles did way faster and more effectively, but he involved them, right? And so a democratic leader is someone who focuses on collaboration, even when they could probably do it faster themselves, but convinced that they'll come up with a better solution and more buy-in when they get input from their team. A pace-setting leader. Did anybody remember what a pace-setting leader was in this model? Okay, he described a pace-setting leader basically as one who sets a real ambitious goal and then really kind of pushes their team in order to meet this ambitious goal. So really to try and take our performance up a level, to like expand our reach. But this focuses on challenging goals and helping your team to reach them. And then the last model was a commanding leader. And this model was much more focused on someone who gives orders, who maintains tight control and expects people to follow their orders, right? So kind of more the authoritarian style of leadership. And he doesn't say that any of these 6 leadership models is the best, and he doesn't say that any of them is bad, but instead he said that there's a time and a place for each one of them. And so that's what we're going to talk about, because this is what will help us to lead our teams more effectively. So before we get to those situations, he said that a good leader has to be able to read the context and decide which leadership style is the most effective in that particular situation. And he said that there were certain things that in order to do this, you needed to develop what he called emotional intelligence. So the components of emotional intelligence that he identified were, first of all, self-awareness. So self-aware, and then again, this is good for all aspects of our ministry, but in this particular situation, it requires the ability to recognize our own emotions and to name them so that we can regulate our own emotions and they don't interfere in a negative way with how we're being called to lead their team. Because we know that our emotions as leaders, the way we handle those will impact the people we serve, either for the better or for the worse. And then he expands that to call it self-regulation, which is the ability to control our emotions and adapt them to the different circumstances. He also identifies the need for what he calls social skill, which is the ability to really engage effective relationships with different people. So that works back to what somebody said earlier about identifying the different personalities in your own team. An emotionally intelligent leader will be able to relate to people individually based on what he observes about their personalities. Another component of emotional intelligence would be empathy, the ability to put yourself in another person's shoes, to recognize how your decision-making affects them, to recognize their feelings about the situation that you're encountering, and so that you can take that into account in not only what you decide, but how you implement it. And then finally, he called the last component of social or emotional intelligence is motivation, the ability to know, like set a good goal, know what the right goal is, and then keep progressing toward that goal without being distracted by unhelpful things. And so with those 6 models of leadership, we got the visionary, coaching, affiliative, democratic, pace setting, and commanding. I'm now going to present us with 6 different scenarios. And what I'd like you to do is take a moment to think about which leadership style might be the most appropriate. I've got my suggestion for each one, but your thoughts may be different. But let's look at these 6 different hypothetical scenarios. All right. So scenario 1, you are a school administrator. Black mold has been discovered throughout one of your dormitories, and it has been deemed unsafe for students to live in. Students are scheduled to arrive next week, and you have to mobilize your staff to make alternative arrangements for their housing before they get here. Take a moment to think which style of leadership you might be called to exercise in this scenario. Any thoughts? Yeah, Brother Jimmy.
To me, this feels like a pace setter. Like there's kind of an emergent problem that needs to be taken care of in a pretty rapid amount of time. So I might want to say, here's the objective we need to accomplish. And we are just like really restricted in the time we can do it. So I think that one I'd almost have this more like sort of pace setting.
Okay. Yeah, Father Mark.
I would say more commanding style, because you have to react quickly and make sure you can start the school year.
Okay, great. And Brother Chan.
My choice was influenced by the last but one line, and you have to mobilize your staff. the mobilization calls for coaching leadership because you need to be able to bring the various teams together. So I'll go for coaching.
Okay. Yeah. And what you'll see is that probably like for each scenario, there's a combination of skills that you used that you need to put to use. For me, I saw this as an example of commanding leadership, which is generally an unpopular one. Like nobody likes a tyrant or a dictator. But what Goldman suggests is that commanding leadership is appropriate when tasks are really straightforward and very clearly defined. And so if in this case, the task is find a place for your students to live next week when they get here. When the team needs clear direction and needs to act fast, when there are serious consequences for action not being taken place, especially as related to health and safety. And so like for basically for crisis situations and emergency situations and health and safety issues, he's saying those are good times for commanding leadership. What he cautions about is that this is typically not a good long-term way to run your team. So when the crisis is over, he says that an effective leader needs to step back and then stop exercising that kind of command, that kind of authoritarian management should be restricted to those times when it's absolutely needed. All right. Right. Example number 2, you lead a parish in a neighborhood that has witnessed a sharp increase in poverty and unemployment. And after consulting with staff and parish leaders, you want to shift resources so that direct outreach to the poor becomes a primary focus of your parish, which represents a significant change from your current level of service to the poor. You need to work with your staff to affect this transformation in your parish. What style of leadership does this bring to mind? Not just one right answer. Yes, Sam.
I would say mostly like affiliative leadership, which will be able to have a kind of a wonderful relationship together, to people to come together to support support the poor who are in need of the things. So more like I would say an affiliative leadership.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Paul.
Yeah, so I think that this is something that you need to build consensus, with your parish members, leaders, and staff. And in building consensus, I think it takes someone who adopts a democratic style of leadership to be able to do that, because they have to buy into the idea, the shift in focus of the parish or the staff. So I think democratic will do. Yeah, that's my opinion here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, Alfred.
Yeah, I also think this would go with the democratic way of leadership because here different sections of people are involved and there is a cause. We need to put ideas together. We need to sit across the table to discuss and to implement and to achieve the goal.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, so in putting this scenario together, I actually thought of it as an example of visionary leadership. And the reason that now, what I would say is you'll probably have to shift to a democratic model when you actually want to implement this. But before you can do that, you've got to get people to buy into this new vision of your parish as a parish where ministry to the poor is at the forefront of how you're seen in the community. And so that, again, you've got this vision of what ministry to the poor is going to look like in the future. Your job is now to bring other people along and get them to buy into that vision as well, so that they can then they can come up with creative ideas. And like I said, once they're bought in, then that democratic style of collaboration can really take place because everybody's working towards the same goal. So, like I said, a visionary leader is someone who will help articulate that vision, let other people help them refine that vision, and then get other people to share in that vision as well. Okay. Right. All right, affiliative leadership. Right. There has been some long-standing tensions between some of your staff members, but in the past, you've been able to manage them okay. Because of the departure of one employee, you've had to shift some job duties around, and this has caused these tensions to come to the surface as remaining employees resist anyone infringing on their turf. These employees have started working in silos and rarely communicate with each other. So you've got this atmosphere of distrust and hostility among your employees. Which leadership style do you think might be effective here? Brother Ken.
I don't know, but from the previous slide and this one, I think you have given your answers already. Because from the previous one, you had affiliate leadership. I raised my hand to alert you, but you didn't get it. The visionary one. And then this one too, you brought it there. So I'm like, hey, you have given the answer already.
That's another form of visionary leadership, leading other people where you want to go, right? So thoughts on this this scenario? Okay. I would call this a scenario where affiliative leadership is needed, because the focus here is not on any particular task or project that you want your team to get done. It's on the fact that there's relationships within the team are not strong. So no matter what project you want them to do, that's going to negatively impact your ability to do that. And so the thought of affiliative leadership is that you are focusing on relationships between people or among people with the hope that that will strengthen overall team performance. So Goldman says that affiliative leadership is most effective when the team requires direct assistance. So in this scenario, the team definitely requires direct assistance, because if nobody intervenes, they're just going to keep on doing what they're doing, right? He says that this is best when it's used together with other styles of leadership, especially coaching or visionary styles. So if you are working on a project and trying to get people to buy into a vision, you might at the same time need to help heal relationships within that team. Otherwise, people are not going to be working toward the same vision. So it's knowing that you have both of these tools in your toolbox that can help you do that. When it's a time when the focus is, it's an appropriate style of leadership when the focus is on people's emotional needs and concerns, and when those are hindering your ability, or when strengthening and tending to people's emotional needs will strengthen team performance. That's when affiliative and kind of team building approach is needed. He says this will not work if situations are really, really complex and you need somebody to give clear instructions. That focus explicitly on team building is difficult to implement at the same time that you're trying to tackle a really complicated task. So that's how Goldman suggests using affiliative leadership. All right, so the next one. Okay, you have recently hired some recent college graduates, so probably people in their early 20s, into your campus ministry organization, replacing some more experienced employees who have left. You know that they will eventually become good employees, but their inexperience relative to their predecessors has caused some extra work for their fellow team members. What management style or leadership style do you think would be effective for these new employees? Yes, Paul.
I think obviously they are a bit inexperienced, so
Yes.
they need time to get their hands on the job, and to do that they need some kind of directions and all that. So having time to coach them, I think, so that they'll be able to become experienced, So I think, as you have rightly put up there, coaching leadership will be appropriate here.
Absolutely. So when you're focused on these new employees, again, you know that they've got lots of potential. You hired them for a reason. But what Goldman says is that coaching is the effective model of leadership when there's a gap between where someone is now and where you would like them to be, or where they would like to be in the future in terms of their skill set and their abilities. And they trust that you as their supervisor can help them get there, right? So they might need a little more direct accompaniment. It only works if the people you are coaching are motivated, So if they are not motivated or not hard workers, and don't take initiative, it's going to be very tough to coach them. So you have to have the right employees in place in order for your coaching to be received. He says also this approach won't work in crisis situations where you don't have time to invest in long-term development and you need to get things done quickly. So coaching would be something that you do separate from managing tasks that require immediate attention or fast results. And the other thing to know too in this example is whereas you would coach your new employees, for the other employees who resent these inexperienced employees, you'd probably need to adopt a different leadership style, maybe something more affiliative to kind of help them learn to work together with this new set of people. So again, the same situation might require two different leadership styles with two different groups. Okay. Next scenario, you are the principal of a Catholic grade school and your school has decided to implement a new school-wide curriculum intended to integrate the Catholic faith into all subject areas. You will work with your department heads over the next 6 months to figure out how to implement this change and introduce this new curriculum. So if you have this 6-month project ahead of you, what do you think might be an effective leadership style to adopt here with your leadership team? Yes, Brother Ken.
Even though you have democratic there, which I agree, because it looks as if they know what they have in mind, but I would like to add that an affiliative leadership style will also work here because this is a group, as the last 3 lines says, you will work with your department heads over the next 6 months to figure out how to implement this change. In that sense, I believe you can co-join affiliating with Democratic to be able to achieve the goal.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because in order for this, if you're going to be working together on this 6-month project, you want a strong team. And so you need to pay attention to those interpersonal dynamics and make sure that this team is really strong and cohesive. Because then the Democratic style is going to work a lot better than it would if the team members don't get along. And so this one I'm presenting as a model of democratic leadership because, first of all, you've got time. You know you've got 6 months ahead of you. So there's time for effective collaboration. There's time to gather all sorts of ideas and sift through them. And you've got the time to do that. And true democratic consensus building takes time. Democratic leadership also assumes, according to Goldman, that all of your team members are competent, that each one of them is professional and possesses a good skill set and is motivated. If you do not have the right people in place, the democratic leadership style is a lot less effective. So time has to be invested in getting the right people on this team if you want to implement a democratic style. And in the same way, people, in order for a democratic style to work, all the team members have to have a positive attitude. If people are being forced onto this team and they resent being there, it's going to be a lot harder to manage them. So trying, again, using those affiliative skills to get them on board into the team will help you implement the democratic style. And then the democratic style, Goldman also says, is particularly effective when high standards are expected. When you have set, when you require excellence, you don't require just a good enough solution, or like sometimes in a crisis situation, you just want to find something that's good enough because you got to do it fast. But in something where truly excellence is required, the more excellence that's required, the more voices you want to hear and the more collaboration is necessary. And that's when being a democratic leader is so important. All right. So the last scenario that I'll present, you are the director of the local Catholic charities and operate the largest food bank in the city. You have an experienced, competent, and motivated staff. You've experienced a sharp increase in the demand for your services, and you're going to implement a new system of collections, warehousing, and distribution with the goal of serving 3 times as many people as you did last year. you've gotten a very substantial donation to make this happen by the end of the year. All right. So why would I have considered that as a pace setting scenario? Yes, Sammy.
I would say it's a kind of goal-oriented or target-oriented towards a charity that is being planned by the local Catholic charity. Because we should have certain kind of aim or goal that has to be set, which the entire the team along with the leader can work together to make this to happen by the end of the year.
Yeah, and because particularly because this goal is ambitious. So if our goal was to increase our services by 3% over the course of a year, you probably wouldn't need pace setting leadership. But since our goal is to increase it by 300%, that's a very ambitious goal. And so that requires a leader to kind of change your leadership style in order to get people to push toward this really, really ambitious goal. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, in addition to that, I think I would also add a visionary leader, because it's a new system, which is 3 times, what you've been doing. And it takes a visionary person to be able to, really identify this and how it's supposed to be done, to the extent that you've even gotten a donation to be able to do that. So I will, in addition to the pace-setting leadership, I would also add the visionary, where you have a positive thought that you could carry out what you have actually visualized it to be able to do that. So I think I'll add that one.
Okay. Yeah, and in fact, I think what you would find is in a situation like this, you would need to start off exercising visionary leadership to identify that this is something we need to do, to get everybody else bought into that and to think that that's a really important thing for us to do. And then when everybody was bought in, then you'd kind of have to shift to pace setting to actually get it done. So this is a great example of transitioning from one style to another. So pace setting, Goldman says, tends to work, again, only work when team members are motivated and competent. If you don't have a good staff that you trust, that really knows what they're doing, you're not going to be able to set an ambitious goal because they won't be able to reach it, right? It requires that you have team members that take initiative and that don't require a lot of direct supervision. For pace setting to work, you need to be able to entrust that your employees are going to get things done on their own, because everybody is going to have a big job to do. So you can't, this is not a time when you can coach somebody every step of the way. Pace setting is often required when quick results are needed, when there's some kind of deadline to approach your goal. But even if all those things are in place, can you think of a downside to using the pace setting approach for long periods of time? Is there a disadvantage if you are always a pace setting manager? Yeah, Brother Jimmy.
I feel like people could just get exhausted. Like you lose some of that. It's names here that they're self-motivated. But at some point they start to question, like, is the pace ever gonna slow down?
Exactly. And so when you utilize this style of leadership, you need to know, like in your mind, exactly kind of what duration you're going to exercise it for. And you need to make sure your team knows that too. So your team knows, hey, we're going to have to push really hard through the end of the year until this is implemented, and then we'll be able to get back to a more reasonable schedule. Because by definition, pressing towards ambitious goals in a pace setting scenario is going to require your employees to just work a lot harder and probably a lot more hours than they often do. So getting them to buy, that's where, again, starting off with a vision that people buy into and where they think it's worth the extra work is important, but everybody's got their limits. And so you need to be able to communicate to people that we're going to push this hard for this given period of time, and then you can expect the workload to return to a more normal level. Okay. And so what I hope you see through this exercise is that again, God will use all of our natural strengths and weaknesses to, no two of us will look identical in the way that we manage people. Each one of us brings different strengths and weaknesses to our role in leadership. But if we know different ways to lead, then we can intentionally choose the way that's going to be the most effective. And if we especially know which styles we gravitate towards and which ones we naturally kind of shy away from, that'll help us to avoid exercising the wrong style that's not going to be effective in a given situation. So, like I said, these 6 styles are not mutually exclusive. They're not set in stone, but it's good for us to recognize that as leaders, we're responsible for altering the way we lead based on different situations. So that's where we'll end today. Just a reminder, we won't meet next Friday. Our last meeting on Zoom will be in 2 weeks from today. And before that time, I'd ask you all, there's something out there on the shared drive that Father Andrew sent out, asking you to track your use of time for a week, because our next section is going to be on time management. And so I encourage you to, again, this is not so that I know what you're doing every step of the way. This is for you, not for me. But I would encourage you to do it a little bit, like not wait until the last week, because I'd love for you to take it to prayer and for you to look at this chart of your time for a week and really spend some time talking to the Lord about what he's telling you through what you see on paper about your use of time. So just know that that's coming up. And so I will see you 2 weeks from today. But in the meantime, let's close by giving glory to God. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end.
end. Amen. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
All right. Thanks a lot, y'all. God bless you. And thanks again, Brother Ronnie, for recording this for us.